Hi, I'm Jana, and I'm taking a Risk and Crisis Communication course at New Mexico Tech University, and I've been asked to prepare a short talk. If you remember nothing else from this talk, remember these 6 principles of risk and crisis communication from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC. Number 1, be first. 2, be right. 3, be credible. 4, express empathy. 5, promote action. 6, show respect. These are the principles that risk and crisis communicators must abide by religiously. So what do these principles look like in practice? Well, sometimes it's easier to explain a principle by giving an example of a complete failure to apply that principle. So let's talk about the Elk River spill in Charleston, West Virginia. This case study is taken from the U.S. National Institute of Health and the U.S. National Library of Medicine. Freedom Industries' Charleston, West Virginia tank farm sits on a narrow crescent of flat land between a steep wooded hillside and the green waters of Elk River. On 9 January 2014, inspectors discovered a stream of a chemical mixture leaking from the bottom of tank number 396 under a containment wall and into the river, which provides drinking water for some 300,000 residents. The mayhem that followed the discovery of the leak rocked the Mountain State. Within 2 weeks, nearly 600 people visited emergency departments for symptoms claimed to be related to the spill, and 13 were hospitalized. Schools and businesses were closed. According to a preliminary study by the Marshall University Center for Business Research, the spill cost the Charleston area businesses more than $61 million in the first month alone. This is a huge deal, guys. This particular incident has won the reputation of a case study in what not to do in terms of risk and crisis communication. So let me break this scenario down for you and give you a timeline. Local civilians called the West Virginia Department of the Environmental Protection, complaining of a strong liquor smell near the tank farm at 8:15 a.m. So that's pretty early in the morning. That's a good start. They were told by a farm employee that there was no problem and that everything was normal and everything's okay. No weird reason for any smell. So finally they checked it out and they had inspectors deployed, and the inspectors dithered about a chemical stream that was actually leaking from one of the tanks. So they said at that time that it hadn't reached the Elk River and that it wasn't a hazardous material. But if you check the safety data sheet, when it is ingested, it is indeed a very hazardous material. The inspectors dithered so long, they didn't call and report, as is the law, about the leak to the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection. But finally, they called it noon, which is 4 hours later. This is 4 hours of water contamination. So they estimated the first time that it was only 1,000 to 2,500 gallons of this chemical that had leaked. And then days later, after all of this was done, they upped it to 7,500 gallons. And then days later from that, they said it's over 10,000 gallons. These estimates were announced officially days apart. They didn't get water testers out to the site until 4 p.m., which is just crazy to me. 300,000 people have now been exposed to this contaminated drinking water for 8 full hours. And finally, a do not use order was issued at 5:50 p.m. So that makes a total of about 10 hours of people being exposed to this contaminated water. There was no communication with the public until 5:50 when the do not use order was announced. Facebook, however, was blowing up with comments. Here's a quote from one of the posts. "The leak happened when? And they're just now deciding this? Everyone in my house has already bathed in it today, including my 3-month-old daughter. I've washed her bottles in it. My animals drank it. Oh, my babies better not get sick." Rumors on Facebook had spread long before the official news came out. The first to give any warning was not a risk and crisis communicator. It was a local citizen who did not have all the facts. This is what it is meant when we talk about the principle, be first. Crises are time sensitive. Communicating information quickly is almost always the most important. For members of the public, the first source of information often becomes the preferred source. If we take a look at the beginning of the day, we notice that employees and inspectors did not give accurate information. They said that there was nothing wrong. They said that there was no danger to the water. They said that the chemical was not hazardous. And they were not right. Be accurate. Accuracy establishes credibility. Information can include what is known, what is not known, and what is being done to fill the gaps. No one could take what these risk and crisis communicators were saying seriously because they kept changing their information. How many gallons had leaked? How long did it take you to figure out it was leaking? And how long did it take you to tell everyone about it? I can see how Facebook was blowing up with angry comments. These communicators had no credibility. They just couldn't get their story straight. They even came out later to say that there was more than one chemical that had leaked. Oh, that's nice to know. And when confronted about the poor information that the public received, the spokesperson got very defensive and said that he was always straightforward in what he was saying, and that the initial numbers about the gallons in the water were just estimates, and he made sure that that was very clear. He got very defensive. That didn't help his rapport. Don't be like this. Be credible. Honesty and truthfulness should not be compromised during crises. It's also important to express empathy. The president of the tank farm televised an apology and told everyone that he'd had a very long day, and then he wouldn't answer any questions. The tank farm CEO's girlfriend posted on Facebook, quote, "No one and no thing has been harmed due to this leakage," unquote. The company's insensitivities caused their public relations firm to quit outright. The company then went bankrupt. A little empathy in this situation would have gone a really long way. Crises create harm, and the suffering should be acknowledged in words. Addressing what people are feeling and the challenges that they face builds trust and rapport. The mid-crisis and post-crisis communication was also very vague and underplayed the problem while simultaneously overstated the problem at the same time. On January 15th, the West Virginia Bureau for Public Health announced that pregnant women should continue to drink bottled water until the chemical was no longer detectable in the tap water out of an abundance of caution. That's a warning that left the public confused and worried. There are no bad examples of the last two principles in this case study. It's not that they're poorly accomplished. It's that they just are completely absent. The fifth principle of risk and crisis communication is promote action. In a crisis, people feel feelings. They feel fear, anxiety, dread, uncertainty, denial, hopelessness, and helplessness. They haven't prepared for a crisis to happen. That's what makes it a crisis. It's our job as a risk and crisis communicator to help them. Promoting action is a great way to curb these negative emotions and to help people get and do something positive out of a bad situation. Not only this, but when we promote action as communicators, we can help mitigate further disorderly conduct. Giving people meaningful things to do calms anxiety, it helps restore order, and it promotes a restored sense of control. No one in this case study showed respect for the general public, the media, the laws, government regulations, or even the whole situation. What does showing respect look like then? Accepting and involving the public as a legitimate partner, listening to the audience, being honest, frank, and open, coordinating and collaborating with other credible sources, meeting the needs of the media, speaking clearly and with compassion. So basically, the first 5 principles that we already talked about. Respectful communication is particularly important when people feel vulnerable. Respectful communication promotes cooperation and rapport. So now you're more familiar with the 6 principles of risk and crisis communication. Be first, be right, be credible, express empathy, promote action, and show respect.